Welcome back, everybody. I am Beautiful Becca, and this is Thursdays Through the Page with my reading life. If you are new to my channel, I am Beautiful Becca, artist, bookworm, and educator. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. And to get ready to write down with me, grab your quill, grab a notepad, okay? And let's get on with the books that I read for the month of May. Let's actually go back a bit. So this one, I started this one a few months ago, but I never really finished it. This is the Genre Hound. So every 4 pages after you write about the books that you read, there'll be like a little segment where you can fill it in, like gifts that keep on giving and stuff like that. So this one had to do with mystery. So far, my favorite mystery writer was the late Phyllis Whitney. The first book I read of hers was The Ebony Swan. When I was in elementary school, I want to say I was around 10 or 11 years old. My other favorite of hers that I have a copy of is Amethyst Dreams. Other works to the best of my memory is Rainbow in the Mist and Woman Without a Past. What I love about her novels is that she incorporates art or includes a character who paints a work of art that is part of the mystery. Although I can't really call it a mystery novel as it's more geared towards Dickensian, Stephen King's The Green Mile. If anyone has seen the film with Tom Hanks and the late Michael Duncan Clark, I want to say. I'm going to have to go back. That film was brilliant, but the book, wow, brilliant. There's more conflict with the former cop now retired at the beginning at the nursing home and his beef with a low-down orderly, very much like the same character of Percy. Percy is the real nutcase, supposed cop, newbie who doesn't know what the heck he's doing. The story just kept going, and there were more clues that were left out of the film. However, I am glad they kept the Methuselah of mice, Mr. Jingles himself, alive in the film. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone here. You'll just have to read it for yourself if you haven't. Another story of that reminded me very much of Coraline, that was written by Stephen King and I think his son? I'm going to have to go back. But it's called Gwendy's Button Box. This book was a page-turner, gripping, a bit gory for my taste, but it was so good and it was so different. And like Phyllis Whitney, King's mystery thriller, Duma Key, was really going somewhere. And then all of a sudden, I got lost in the last 6 to 10 chapters. The character Edgar Fremantle, or Freemason, it's one of those two. His paintings come to life after a major accident that almost took his life. But then later on, the paintings come to life and are the direct cause of the murder. Gripping stuff. So check it out. On to the books that I read for the month. Again, I didn't really read so much this month because I was doing a 30-minute vlog every single day for a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. It was to write 30 minutes every day in May. I can't write so much. Again, even handwriting I'm just forcing my fingers to hold the pen, and even on a few of them, you can see where I made a couple of mistakes. I think I highlighted them even. Or maybe it's just in my journal. So I put this one as a Pop Sugar Reading Task Challenge. A book that's on a celebrity book club list. Now, originally, I was going to read The House of Sand and Fog that was recommended by the Oprah Winfrey Club book club list. Other books of hers other books that are on Oprah's list are The Story of Edgar Sawtelle, She's Come Undone, surprisingly, by Wally Lamb. But even though this is not part of a celebrity book club list, this guy is known for reading very unique books, and it was revealed on the British Culture's GQ's 10 Essential Things. Of course, my favorite actor, Andrew Garfield. One of the books that was on that list, rather, one of the books that he showed on that 10-minute spiel, was called The Wayfinders. And it's this book here, Why Ancient Wisdom Matters in the Modern World, and it's by Wade Davis. I read this from May 7th to the 16th. I'm going to have to find a different reading journal because I don't want to really focus so much on the cover. It's basically what the book has to say. But like I said, a cover has to say, pick me up and buy me. This one could, not so much the cover itself, but the subtitle. Because my question was, what are the wayfinders? What does that mean? But this is the one that spoke to me the most. Why ancient wisdom matters in today's modern world. So that's what I loved about the cover. It was the subtitle. There's also, it appears to be a warrior set in his country's background, which tells me if this didn't speak to you, then perhaps the text with the visual would. Ancient wisdom matters. So perhaps this person, you might ask yourself, is carrying something of ancient wisdom with him for today's century. I haven't read any of the book by Wade Davis. The feelings this book evoked in me, what this guy had to write about, he talked about the building blocks of our ancient wisdom that go way far back and how we seem to have lost that in today's century. Equality and fairness and connection on a wider scale to the ancestors, that even though I am not a blood relative, but the DNA and ancient wisdom goes so far back. And I love anything that has to do with ancient wisdom and this feeling of sameness amongst diverse cultures that focus on that connection rather than those differences. So let me just go over a couple of my favorite passages here. Chapter 2 is called The Wayfinders, and this chapter spoke to me the most, along with a few others as well, such as Sacred Geography, the Peoples of the Anaconda, and what was the last one? Yeah, Century of the Wind, but it was basically chapter 2, The Wayfinders, that spoke to me the most. It has to do with the Polynesian navigators, and I'm going to go more into that. But here's just a few. We are all literally brothers and sisters. We are all cut from the same genetic cloth. The science and art of navigation is holistic. The flow of data, intuition, and insights from observations of the wind, waves, clouds, stars, sun, moon, the flight of birds, a bed of kelp. In other words, changing world of weather and sea. Did reading this book change me in any way? It gave me more insight and research about navigation, that when it comes to the tools that aren't really used, because the wayfinders don't use a sextant, they don't use map or chart, they don't use map charts or anything. They use nature to give them clues in order to navigate from island to island, from sea to sea. Nature is constantly giving clues, and Western culture, we somehow have forgotten how to use that. Who would I like to share this book with? After watching what happened on CNN today about a cut down from the Pentagon on the LGBTQ event because they were pressured by Republicans, not to get too political here, but people in general who are so conservative, who refuse to see diverse cultures as the same culture as the individual. Individuals everywhere, we all share the same. We're all from different cultures, but within those cultures lies the same DNA of ancient wisdom, and we somehow are not reaching far back enough to see that, well, to be able to share that with each other. Everyone seems to have built this wall of stubborn pride when it comes to differences and diversity, and underneath that, the building blocks go far back. And yeah, we just somehow have forgotten those building blocks that connect all of us to one another. I would recommend reading this book at least for the first time. Certain parts may speak to you. The entire book may speak to you. Only certain parts of the book spoke to me on a personal level. And I would actually write down the parts that mean that much to you. The writing style, I loved it. The message, I loved it, about that about connecting back to our ancient wisdom. I don't want to say it was just okay. I didn't love it, but it was right here in the middle of my reading experience. You need to be able to enjoy the reading experience, and I enjoyed it to a point. There's a lot of research that is involved here that I really loved even more, to be honest with you. The second book I read was a fluke, really. This one also meets another one of the Pop Sugar Reading Challenges, a book you bought from an independent bookstore. Now, originally, if you guys have watched the video that I had before on the list, the reading challenge list, the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge list, I originally had the Gilded Page that I bought from Roman's Bookstore, but a couple of Sundays ago, we had our choir concert at the Sinai Temple, and we met our brother, I met my brother with my family in Culver City, and we went to the Culver City Mall for dinner, and we had some time to walk around, and the last 10 minutes before the store closed for the evening, we went to this independent bookstore called Malik Books, African American and Diversity Books. I recommend going to the store. Even though it's a small bookstore, there is nothing small about the diversity of the authors that are on those shelves, with their stories, their the nonfiction, personal narratives. It's all over the place, and I highly recommend going to this independent bookstore. The cover of this book. So the book I read was called The Warrior of Light. The author is Paul Coelho, who, he's the one who wrote The Alchemist. I did read this book last year. Parts of the book spoke to me, other parts did not. This book I highly, 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 highly recommend. The Warrior of Light. It's an inspirational companion to The Alchemist. I chose this book because it was in a section where it also had these sets of Toltec wisdom by Don Ruiz and Miguel Ruiz. And I have that set, and I loved it. It was called the Four Agreements, and then there's another one called the Fifth Agreement. But it happened to be in the same section, and I was surprised to find this book in that section. But I wouldn't be surprised that it would be in this particular bookstore. The cover. Well, first of all, the cover is blue, and blue is my all-time favorite color. But I loved it because I'm into knights, I'm into warriors. Just the very word itself means bravery. And the Warrior of Light, what is the Warrior of Light? So, I loved it because it has this Moroccan feel to it. All of Coelho's books, the title is in the middle, and around each corner, you'll find some sort of symbol that is discussed in the story. Such as here, for instance, both opposite corners, we have a church and we have the bells. These two are talked about in the very first chapter of the book. So, why I chose it, I read Coelho's The Alchemist, and I didn't expect to see this book, and I didn't expect it to meet this particular book task. So I did read The Alchemist, The Warrior of Light. These are the other two I want to read by the author. He has a bunch more that are listed in the back. The Pilgrimage is his own personal memoir of his journey to Spain. And then there's another book of his called The Archer that looks interesting. But these are all the books by Paul Coelho that I definitely want to read. And here's just a few of these titles here. Veronica Decides to Die, Brida, The Valkyries, 11 Minutes, The Zaire, The Witch of Portobello, The Winner Stands Alone, The Devil and Miss Prim, The Fifth Mountain, By the River Pedra, I Sat Down and Wept, The Aleph, Hippie, Manuscript Found in Accra, Adultery, and The Spy. And there's The Archer. The Spy, if you look closely, this is Matahari. So I guess this is a narrative. I guess this is a nonfiction book about Matahari, who was a burlesque dancer, but she was also a spy. So the feelings this book evoked in me, it was so uplifting, and it was almost like it was its own personal guidance to the person who reads it. Parts of the book I love for research. It speaks of the warrior who was both vulnerable and victorious. So here's just a few of my favorite passages. All of this was found on page 85. On the warriors of light themselves, they are wounded by the most foolish things. They worry about trivialities. They believe themselves incapable of growing, sometimes believe themselves unworthy of any blessing or miracle. Because they fail, because they ask questions, they keep looking for a meaning, and in the end, they will find it. Did reading this book change me in any way? Partially. I'm going through some really tough personal struggles right now that have affected me so greatly. And I would need to read this book every day in order just to stay ahead of those struggles and just to keep me going. This is like one of those books that it's almost like a Bible of guidance for today. It's almost like I would call this book a book of virtue. And I love the book of virtue. Almost like a moral compass. That's what this is. Who would I like to share this with? Today's struggling students. What would I hope for them to take away from it? We are taught, as a student myself, we are set on this path. We are told, we are taught that if you fail, you blew it, you flunk it, you will never get out of it. So we are forced to make sure that we don't fail. Here's the problem with that. If we don't fail, we will never learn on what happens if we do. We won't know how to move forward if we do fail when everyone has taught us not to fail. We have this mindset that we are taught to progress. We are taught to study hard so that we pass. There is no such thing as a failed class grade. Guess what? There is. And it's there for a reason. So it's okay to fail because you learn from those mistakes, and you can learn what it takes to discover. Well, they can learn what it takes to discover themselves through failure. And in fact, one of the modules I taught my students was what it takes to get into college. And one of these articles is, want to get into college? Learn to fail. Because one of the students said to this professor, I look forward to the possibility of failure. And the professor looked at the student going, excuse me? And the student was like, yes, I look forward to failing. Because only then will I truly learn what it means to progress. So I highly recommend The Warriors of Light. There was another page in here that I'll go over in just a minute, but I loved everything. The writing style, the message, the reading experience. But the reason I love this book so much is because there's this one page on medieval knights, and it talks about, I'm not sure if you can see it, it's called The Breviary of Medieval Knights. I've never heard of this, which means I'm going to have to do some research on it. But because I am working on a medieval project, it says, the spiritual energy of the path uses justice and patience to prepare your spirit. This is the path of the knight, a path that is at once easy and difficult because it forces one to set aside trivial things and chance friendships. That is why at first many hesitate to follow it. This is the first teaching of the knights. You will erase everything you had written in the book of your life up until now. Restlessness, uncertainty, lies. And in the place of all this, you will write the word courage. By beginning the journey with that word and continuing with faith in God, you will arrive wherever you need to arrive. Another book that I read for this month was Is Not by Tess Gallagher. Now, I had read her book, her collection of poetry, Dear Ghosts, years ago, and I wrote to her agent asking if I could interview her. Because of so many commitments, she's not able to do it right now, but hopefully later on. I have a whole bunch more of her books that I have on hold. Her latest poetry collection is not. Half of it spoke to me, half of it did not, but I would recommend reading a book of poetry for anyone because poetry speaks volumes. And some of you may have trouble understanding and breaking down poetry. Take a poem and break it down line by line and interpret it yourself. Don't depend on other interpretations of it. Take a chance to interpret it yourself and see if it speaks to you. That's what I would recommend. So that was Thursday's Through the Page, and I will see you guys the next time. Bye.